Sit down, young man. Adults are talking. Judge Shannon Alexander's words cut through the stale courtroom air like a blade. 16-year-old Nicholas Watson stands frozen in a suit 2 sizes too big, drowning in the weight of 200 stares. His mother, Deidre, sits handcuffed in an orange jumpsuit, her head bowed under the fluorescent lights. Officer Joanne Travis grips her shoulder with practiced indifference. "Your Honor," Nicholas's voice cracks but doesn't break. "My mom didn't attack anyone." The gavel slams once, twice, the sound of a door closing. "Security, remove this child." Shannon points at Nicholas like he's contaminated, her lip curling in barely disguised contempt. The gallery erupts in murmurs. Some spectators shake their heads, others smirk behind their hands, entertained by the audacity. The bailiff's hand moves to his belt, keys jingling as he steps forward. Deidre's shoulders shake. Her eyes lift to meet her son's, pleading, desperate, broken. Tears stream down her face as she reaches toward him with trembling, shackled hands. At the prosecutor's table, Richard Gaines shuffles his papers, not even bothering to hide his smug satisfaction. But Nicholas doesn't move. His spine straightens, his shoulders square. His eyes, those same intelligent eyes his mother gave him, narrow with laser focus. The fear drains away, replaced by something harder. Something forged in late-night study sessions and a mother's unconditional love. In this moment, surrounded by contempt and corruption, something awakens inside Nicholas Watson, something dangerous. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. 3 months earlier, Nicholas Watson sat cross-legged on the worn kitchen floor, surrounded by towers of medical textbooks and legal notebooks. The small 2-bedroom apartment in the working-class neighborhood felt cramped on good days. But tonight, with these books spread around him like a fortress, the world felt infinite. "Mom, why do you keep all these old law textbooks if you're just a nurse?" Nicholas called out, holding up a battered copy of Introduction to Criminal Justice. Deidre Watson appeared in the doorway, still in her pale blue scrubs from the night shift. Her weathered hands told the story of 15 years saving lives on 12-hour shifts. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, testimony to the double shifts she pulled to keep Nicholas in debate club and AP classes. But those eyes, sharp, intelligent, undefeated, told a different story. "Because knowledge is the one thing they can't take from us, baby," she said, settling beside him on the floor with a soft groan. "I may heal with my hands, but I protect with my mind. These books? They're insurance." Nicholas traced the worn spine of a civil procedure manual, the pages yellowed and dog-eared from use. Insurance against what? Deidre was quiet for a long moment, watching her son's fingers move across the legal text the way she'd taught him to move across piano keys, carefully, reverently, seeking the meaning beneath the surface. Against a world that tries to make you small. At 16, Nicholas was already ranked 3rd in his class. His guidance counselor called him Ivy League material. His debate coach said he argued like a seasoned attorney. But none of them knew about the midnight hours he spent absorbing these books while his mother worked, learning the architecture of justice like other kids learned video games. His bedroom walls told the real story. Where other teenagers hung posters of athletes and musicians, Nicholas had taped up landmark Supreme Court decisions. Brown versus Board of Education, Miranda v. Arizona, Gideon versus Wainwright, Each case was a victory for someone the system had counted out. Each one was proof that knowledge could bend the arc of history. "Nicholas, dinner's ready," Deidre called from their tiny kitchen. The Watson household had one unbreakable rule. They ate dinner together every single night, no matter how exhausted. It was their sanctuary, their war room, their place of dreams. The small table was set with mismatched plates and big ambitions. Tonight, like every night, Deidre asked about his day, really listened to his answers, and pushed him to think 3 steps ahead. "Mrs. Chen says I should consider pre-law at Cleveland State," Nicholas said between bites of his mother's chicken and rice. "Maybe even Kent State's honors program. College is expensive, baby." Deidre said it carefully, the way she always did when money came up. She worked 60-hour weeks, and still they counted every dollar. "We'll find a way," she said firmly, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "You've got something special, Nicholas. I see it in how you think, how you question everything, how you never accept because I said so as an answer." Nicholas looked at his mother, this woman who woke up at 4:30 every morning, who came home bone-tired but still quizzed him on vocabulary, who believed in his dreams even when they seemed impossible for a kid from their zip code. "I want to be a lawyer," he said quietly. "Not just any lawyer. I want to be the kind who fights for people like us. People the system overlooks." Deidre smiled, the same smile that had carried her through nursing school as a single mother, through every double shift, through every sacrifice. "Then, that's exactly what you'll be." But their world was about to shatter. The call came on a Thursday night while Nicholas was finishing calculus homework. Deidre had been working at Lakeside Memorial Hospital for 8 years, the night shift in the cardiac unit. It was hard work, physically exhausting, emotionally draining, but she was good at it. She had a reputation for catching things other nurses missed, for advocating fiercely for her patients, even when it made her unpopular with the administration. The hospital was a monument to medical excellence. At least that's what the marble lobby proclaimed. Lakeside Memorial served Cleveland's wealthiest residents, the kind of people who expected 5-star service with their surgeries. But behind the polished facade, corners were cut. Supplies ran short. Staffing was chronically inadequate. And nurses like Deidre were expected to do more with less while smiling through it all. When Deidre discovered her patient, Charles Brenner, a wealthy real estate developer, had been left unattended for over 3 hours, developing life-threatening complications, she did what her conscience demanded. She confronted her supervisor, Megan O'Rourke. "Megan, Mr. Brenner's been showing signs of internal bleeding for hours. Nobody's checked on him. We need to call the attending now." Megan barely looked up from her clipboard, her voice dripping with dismissive authority. "Mind your station, Deidre. You're paid to follow orders, not diagnose patients." "I'm paid to keep patients alive," Deidre shot back. "And he's going to die if someone doesn't—" That's when Megan snapped. She shoved Deidre backward, her face twisted with rage, screaming about uppity nurses who don't know their place. The medication cart rolled, supplies clattered to the floor. Another nurse gasped. Deidre steadied herself, her voice calm but steel-reinforced. "Touch me again, and we'll have a problem." Megan's eyes went cold, calculating. What happened next took less than 30 seconds, but it would change everything. When Deidre reached past Megan to grab the call button for the attending physician, Megan stumbled backward. Whether from her own momentum or deliberately, Nicholas would later spend sleepless nights wondering, and struck her head against the medication cart. By the time hospital security arrived, Megan had crafted her story. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. The other nurses, terrified of losing their jobs in a brutal economy, said nothing. One even corroborated Megan's version, that Deidre had violently attacked her supervisor after being corrected for negligence. Charles Brenner's complications blamed on Deidre's distraction and neglect. Within hours, photographs of Megan's injuries were documented. Within 2 days, a police report was filed. Within a week, Officer Joanne Travis arrived at Lakeside Memorial during Deidre's shift, handcuffs gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Deidre Watson, honor student's mother, devoted nurse, woman who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, was arrested in front of her colleagues and charged with assault and criminal neglect. And Nicholas Watson's real education was about to begin. The Cleveland Public Library became Nicholas's second home, but it wasn't by choice. Every day after school, at exactly 3:45 p.m., Nicholas claimed the same corner table in the legal reference section. The librarians knew him by name now, the teenager who spent 6 hours a day buried in criminal procedure manuals, while his classmates went to football games and worried about homecoming dates. "Son, we're closing in 15 minutes, Mr. Kowalski said gently, his keys already jingling in his hand. Nicholas looked up from Ohio Criminal Code Annotated, his eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. "Just 15 more minutes? I'm so close to understanding this discovery statute." Mr. Kowalski's expression softened. He'd watched Nicholas transform over the past month from a bright kid into something desperate and determined. A boy trying to become a man overnight because the world demanded it. "You can't save her if you collapse from exhaustion, son." But Nicholas couldn't stop, because in 3 days his mother would stand trial. And the only thing standing between Deidre Watson and a prison cell was a 16-year-old boy with a library card and his dead father's oversized suit, because in 3 days his mother would stand trial. And the only thing standing between Deidre Watson and a prison cell was a 16-year-old boy with a library card and his dead father's oversized suit. But first, they had to meet her lawyer. Mr. Gregory Hollins arrived at the county jail visitation room exactly 14 minutes late, carrying a coffee-stained briefcase and the exhausted expression of a man who'd stopped believing in justice somewhere around his 100th case. He didn't make eye contact when he sat down. "Mrs. Watson," he said, flipping through a file so thin it could barely be called evidence review. "I've looked over your case. Here's my recommendation. Take the plea. 2 years, probation after 18 months if you demonstrate good behavior." The words landed like stones. Nicholas felt his mother's hand tighten around his. Across the scratched plexiglass divider, Deidre's face went pale. "Mr. Hollins," she said carefully, "I didn't attack anyone. I was trying to save my patient." "Ma'am, I understand that's your version of events." Hollins didn't look up from his papers. "But the hospital has medical documentation, witness statements, and photographic evidence. You're a single mother with a minor child. Prison would be— You didn't even look at the evidence." Nicholas's voice cracked through the small room like a whip. Hollins finally looked at him. Really looked. His eyes held the particular weariness of someone who'd seen too many families break against the machinery of the criminal justice system. "Son, I've been doing this for 12 years. I know how these cases—" "12 years of what? Giving up?" Nicholas leaned forward, his hands pressed flat against the metal table. "Have you talked to the other nurses?" Reviewed the full security footage? Checked my mom's employment record? She's never even had a write-up in 8 years. Nicholas, Deidre whispered. Baby, don't. It's your word against the hospital's, Hollins said flatly, closing the file. And the judge? Shannon Alexander. Trust me, you don't want to test her patience. She's not sympathetic to… He trailed off, but the silence completed the sentence. She's not sympathetic to people like you. Nicholas felt something cold crystallize in his chest. How long did you spend reviewing my mother's case, Mr. Hollins? I've given it appropriate attention. How long? Hollins shifted in his seat. I have 43 active cases, son. I do the best I can with the resources. 15 minutes. Nicholas stood, the chair scraping against linoleum. You've decided my mother should go to prison based on 15 minutes of appropriate attention. Nicholas, please. Deidre's voice broke. He's trying to help. No, he's not. Nicholas stared at Hollins with the laser focus that made him captain of the debate team. He's processing her, like paperwork. Hollins closed his briefcase with a decisive click. Mrs. Watson, you have 48 hours to accept the plea. After that, we go to trial, and I promise you the outcome will be worse. Judge Alexander has a 90% conviction rate. She doesn't lose. The meeting ended 3 minutes later. Nicholas walked out of that jail with his hands shaking and his mind racing. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed, to grind people like his mother into dust, one plea deal at a time. That night, Nicholas opened his laptop and started digging. Judge Shannon Alexander. The name glowed on his screen like a target. He started with public records, campaign finance reports, court statistics. What he found made his blood run cold. In the past 5 years, Judge Shannon had presided over 47 cases involving healthcare workers accused of negligence or assault. Her ruling pattern was surgical in its consistency. 90% is. Conviction rate when the defendant was a person of color. 85% acquittal rate when the defendant was white. But the real discovery came at 2:37 a.m. when Nicholas cross-referenced Shannon's campaign donors with hospital board members. Brenner Foundation, $45,000. Community development grants paid directly to Shannon's re-election campaign. The same Brenner Foundation that owned Lakeside Memorial Hospital. The same foundation was run by Henry Brenner, brother of Charles Brenner, the patient in his mother's case. Nicholas screenshot everything. His hands moved on autopilot, creating folders, organizing evidence, building a timeline that connected money to power to injustice. Outside his window, Cleveland slept. Inside, a 16-year-old boy was learning that the scales of justice could be bought. At school the next day, Nicholas moved through the halls like a ghost. Mr. Watson, are you with us? Mrs. Chen asked in AP Government, but Nicholas was reading Ohio judicial ethics codes on his phone under the desk. Nicholas, you missed debate practice again, Coach Morrison said. Regional competition is in 2 weeks. You're our captain. I quit, Nicholas said, and kept walking toward the library. That's where Layla Owens found him during lunch, surrounded by printouts and highlighters, eating vending machine crackers because he'd forgotten about food. Nick, Layla sat down across from him, her voice gentle but firm. You look like hell. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're skipping class. You quit debating. And Sarah said you haven't answered anyone's texts in a week. She reached across to close his laptop. Talk to me. Nicholas rubbed his eyes. Layla had been his friend since freshman year, the only person at school who knew about his mom's case. The only one who didn't treat him like a tragedy. The system is rigged, Layla. The judge, the hospital, the lawyer, all of it. My mom doesn't have a chance. So what are you going to do? You can't fight judges, Nick. They have all the power. Nicholas looked at his friend, this girl who believed in playing by rules that were never written to protect people like them. I'm not fighting them, he said quietly. I'm learning their playbook. Every rule, every precedent, every loophole they use to win. Because if the system is rigged, then I need to know exactly how the rigging works. Layla stared at him for a long moment. You're serious? My mom goes to trial in 2 days. You're 16 years old. And she's innocent. Layla shook her head. But Nicholas saw something flicker in her eyes. Maybe respect. Maybe fear. Maybe both. That night, Nicholas did what he'd been avoiding for a week. He watched the video. Someone had posted Deidre's arrest on social media, because of course they had. Nurse arrested for patient abuse, read the caption, with fire emojis and shares climbing into the thousands. Nicholas downloaded it, opened the video editor his debate team used for presentation clips, slowed the footage down frame by frame. $100 for it. Officer Joanne Travis enters the hospital corridor. $100, 20 feet. Megan O'Rourke points toward Deidre. 131. Travis approaches, hand already moving toward her handcuffs. $45. Deidre tries to speak. Travis cuts her off. $52. Travis starts to activate her body cam, then Nicholas rewound, played it again, slowed it to quarter speed. 153. Officer Travis's eyes shift. She's looking at someone off camera, someone behind the person recording. $100. Travis's hand drops from her body cam, deliberately. She presses a button, the off button, Nicholas realized. 155. She turns back to Deidre. Ma'am, you're under arrest. Nicholas sat back, his heart pounding. Officer Travis had looked at someone before disabling her camera. Someone had signaled her. Someone who didn't want that arrest recorded. He screenshotted the frame, zoomed in, enhanced the reflection in the window behind Travis. A man in a dark suit. Expensive. Just a shadow, but there. Something didn't add up. And Nicholas Watson was going to find out exactly what. And Nicholas Watson was going to find out exactly what. But first, he had to stop his mother from giving up. The visitation room at Cuyahoga County Jail smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat. Nicholas sat across from his mother, separated by plexiglass that had been scratched by 1,000 desperate hands before his. Deidre looked smaller than he remembered. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight in just 3 weeks. Her hair, usually neat and pulled back for her nursing shifts, was pulled into a simple ponytail. But it was her eyes that gutted him. Those sharp, intelligent eyes that had read him bedtime stories and checked his homework now looked hollow, broken. "Baby," she said softly, her voice crackling through the phone receiver. "I need you to listen to me." Nicholas gripped the phone tighter. "Mom, I found something. In the arrest video, Officer Travis..." "Nicholas, stop." Deidre pressed her palm against the plexiglass. "I'm taking the plea deal." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What? No, Mom, you can't." 2 years. I'll be out in 18 months with good behavior. You'll be starting college. You didn't do anything wrong." Nicholas's voice rose, drawing glances from other families scattered around the visitation room, each having their own version of this same desperate conversation. "I know that. You know that," Deidre's voice cracked. "But it doesn't matter, sweetheart. The hospital has lawyers, money, witnesses who'll say whatever they're told to say. We have Mr. Hollins and 15 minutes of his attention. Then we fire Hollins. We find someone else. With what money, baby?" Deidre's eyes filled with tears. "I've been suspended without pay for 3 weeks. We're already behind on rent. I can't ask you to—" "I'm not letting you go to prison for something you didn't do." The guard near the door shifted, a warning that they were getting too loud. Nicholas lowered his voice, but the intensity remained. "Mom, please. Give me time. I'm researching. I'm finding things. Nicholas." Deidre leaned closer to the glass, and he saw his own desperation reflected in her face. "I need you to take care of yourself. Finish school. Go to college. Live your life. Don't let my case destroy your future." "My future?" Nicholas felt hot tears burn behind his eyes. "You are my future. You think I'm going to just abandon you? I'm not asking you to abandon me. I'm asking you to survive this." Deidre wiped her eyes with her orange sleeve. "Truth doesn't always win here, sweetheart. Sometimes survival is the only victory we get." The visitation timer buzzed. 5 minutes remaining. Nicholas pressed his hand against the plexiglass, matching his mother's palm on the other side. The barrier between them might as well have been miles. "I'm not giving up," he whispered. "Even if you do, I won't." Deidre smiled through her tears, that same smile that had carried them through his father's death, through poverty, through every impossible thing they'd ever faced together. "You're so much like your daddy," she said. "Stubborn as hell." The guard called time. Nicholas watched them lead his mother back through the metal door, back to a cell she didn't deserve, back to a fate that waited with open jaws. He walked out of that jail with his jaw clenched and his vision blurred. His mother might be ready to surrender, but Nicholas Watson was just getting started. That night, Nicholas sat on his bedroom floor surrounded by his mother's belongings, the things he'd brought home from her apartment before they lost it to unpaid rent. Nursing manuals, anatomy textbooks, CPR certification notebooks, the debris of a life spent helping people who would never help her back. And one thin blue binder, Introduction to Criminal Justice. Nicholas picked it up, dust coating his fingers. It was from his mother's community college days, before nursing school, before his father died, before life narrowed her options down to survival. He opened it randomly and read, "The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the right to effective counsel. Not just counsel, effective counsel. The right to a defense that actually defends." Nicholas read the sentence again, then again. Effective counsel. Mr. Hollins wasn't effective. He was a processing machine, churning through cases like widgets on an assembly line. 14 minutes of attention. No investigation. No fight. Nicholas grabbed his laptop and started searching. Ineffective assistance of counsel. Sixth Amendment violations. Right to self-representation. The searches led him down a rabbit hole of case law and legal precedent. Ferretta versus California. The right to represent yourself. Strickland v. Washington. The standard for proving ineffective counsel. But Nicholas wasn't a lawyer. He was 16 years old. He couldn't represent his mother, could he? At 2:17 a.m., buried in an Ohio legal database he'd accessed through the public library's website, Nicholas found it. Ohio Code Section 830.4, Familial Assistance in Criminal Defense. When appointed counsel has been deemed grossly inadequate and the defendant opts for pro se representation, immediate family members may petition the court to serve as legal assistants, provided they demonstrate sufficient knowledge of legal procedure and the consent of the defendant. Nicholas read it 5 times. His hands trembled as he clicked through to the case citations, the precedent, the requirements. It was obscure, barely used, rarely granted, but it was there. A crack in the wall, a way in. Family members could assist. If he could prove Hollins was inadequate, if his mother agreed, if the judge allowed it. But if was more than they'd had an hour ago. Nicholas spent the rest of the night reading everything he could find about Section 830.4. Only 3 cases in Ohio history had successfully invoked it. The requirements were steep. He'd need to file motions, cite case law, demonstrate competence before a judge who already hated them. But it was possible. At 6:47 a.m., the sun rose over Cleveland, painting his bedroom walls gold. Nicholas hadn't slept. His eyes burned. His head pounded. His half-empty coffee mug sat cold beside legal pads covered in notes. He stood and walked to the mirror, the same mirror where his father used to adjust his tie before construction sites. The same mirror where Nicholas had practiced debate speeches. His father's suit hung on the door. The black one, slightly worn at the elbows, still smelling faintly of concrete dust and determination. Nicholas pulled on the jacket. Too big in the shoulders, too long in the sleeves. But when he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a kid playing dress-up. He saw someone ready to fight. Nicholas picked up his father's old tie, navy blue with thin silver stripes, and looped it around his neck. His hands remembered the motions his father had taught him years ago. Over, under, through. If the system won't defend her, Nicholas said to his reflection, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. I will. He pulled the knot tight. Outside, the city woke up to another ordinary day. But for Nicholas Watson, the war had just begun, and wars required intelligence. Lakeside Memorial Hospital looked different in daylight. The marble lobby gleamed with the kind of wealth that poor people only saw when they were sick or dying. A fountain burbled near the entrance because apparently healing required decorative water features. Nicholas walked through the automatic doors at 3:42 p.m., wearing his school backpack and carrying the story he'd rehearsed a dozen times. The security guard at the desk barely looked up. Help you? I'm here to pick up my mom's things. Deidre Watson, she doesn't work here anymore. Nicholas let his voice crack slightly. Not hard, considering the truth behind the lie. The guard checked a list, his expression softening with pity. The personnel office is on the 3rd floor. Elevators to your left. Thank you. Sir? Nicholas took the elevator, but he pressed the button for the 2nd floor. The cardiac wing, where his mother had worked for 8 years, was quiet during the shift change. Nicholas moved through the hallways with purpose, like he belonged there, clutching a visitor badge he'd palmed from the lobby counter. He'd studied the hospital layout on Google Maps, but seeing it in person was different. Every corner could hide security cameras. Every person in scrubs could recognize him from the news coverage. The records room was exactly where the hospital directory said it would be. Down a side hallway marked Staff Only, past the break room, behind a door labeled Medical Records, Authorized Personnel. Nicholas tried the handle. Locked. He was about to turn back when the door opened from the inside, and a young woman nearly walked straight into him. She wore an IT department badge and carried a laptop bag. Her eyes went wide. "You're not supposed to be—" she started, then stopped, really looked at him. "You're Deidre's son." Nicholas's pulse spiked. "I was just looking for evidence." She said it quietly, glancing down the hallway. "Come on, quickly." She pulled him into the records room and locked the door behind them. The room was smaller than Nicholas expected, lined with filing cabinets and humming servers. The young woman set down her laptop bag and studied him with dark, intelligent eyes. "I'm Daniela," she said. "IT support. I worked the night your mom was arrested." "Why are you helping me?" Daniela's jaw tightened. "Because they told me to delete footage from that night." The air left Nicholas's lung. "Who told you?" "Megan O'Rourke, and some lawyers from the Brenner Foundation's legal team. They said it was routine security maintenance." She made air quotes with her fingers. "But I've been doing IT here for 3 years. Nothing about that request was routine." "Did you delete it?" Daniela looked at him like he'd asked if the sky was green. "Hell no. I moved it to a backup server they don't know exists. The hospital's security system is ancient. They barely understand how it works. But I do." She crossed to one of the server racks and pulled out a laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I've been waiting for someone to care enough to look. I didn't think it would be a kid, but—" She glanced at him. "Your mom was the only nurse who ever said good morning to me. Like I was a person. Not just the IT girl." The screen flickered to life, displaying a grid of security camera feeds. "This is the night of the incident," Daniela said, pulling up archived footage. "The hospital submitted edited clips to the police. About 90 seconds total, taken from angles that made it look like your mom was aggressive. But here's the full feed." She pressed play. Nicholas watched his mother on screen, moving through the cardiac ward at 11:47 p.m. She approached room 304, Charles Brenner's room. Her body language was calm, professional. Then Megan O'Rourke appeared, blocking her path. The video had no audio, but Nicholas could read the confrontation in their postures. His mother pointed toward the patient room. Megan shakes her head, getting in Deidre's face. Then the shove, Megan pushing Deidre backward. And what happened next made Nicholas's breath catch. Deidre didn't fight back. She didn't swing. Instead, as Megan stumbled, Deidre lunged forward, not to attack, but to grab a medication tray that was rolling toward the supervisor. She pushed it away, protective instinct overriding everything else, even as Megan fell. The tray would have hit Megan in the head. Deidre had saved her from a serious injury, and they'd edited it to look like assault. "The clips they submitted started 3 seconds after your mom moved," Daniela said quietly. "Made it look like she pushed the tray at Megan, not away from her." Nicholas couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Can you copy this?" he finally managed. Daniela was already pulling out a flash drive. "Already done. But you need to understand something, Nicholas." She handed him the drive, her expression grave. "The Brenners own this hospital and half this city. They have lawyers, judges, politicians in their pocket. This footage proves your mom's innocence, but it also proves they committed evidence, tampering, and false imprisonment." "Good." "No, not good. Dangerous." Daniela gripped his arm. "They will come after you. They will discredit this. They have the power to make you and this footage disappear. Be careful." Nicholas slipped the flash drive into his pocket. "Thank you for not deleting it, for keeping it safe. Your mom didn't deserve this." Daniela unlocked the door, checking the hallway. Now go. Different route than you came." Nicholas made it to the stairwell before his hands started shaking. He was halfway down when he heard voices below, professional, clipped, echoing in the concrete chamber. He peered over the railing. Officer Joanne Travis stood on the landing below, talking to a man in an expensive suit, a hospital lawyer, based on the leather portfolio and the Lakeside Memorial ID badge. "Contained," the lawyer was saying. "The trial's in 2 days. She'll take the plea." "And if she doesn't?" Travis's voice was tight. "She will. Her lawyer's already convinced her. These people always fold." Nicholas pressed himself against the wall, barely breathing. Travis shifted, and for a split second her gaze traveled upward. Her eyes locked with Nicholas's. Her expression hardened, cold recognition. Nicholas ran. He burst through the stairwell door on the first floor, cutting through the lobby, pushing past visitors and staff. The security guard called out something, but Nicholas didn't stop until he was 6 blocks away, doubled over and gasping behind a coffee shop. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Delete what you found. Last warning." Nicholas stared at the text, his heart hammering. Then he deleted it, pocketed his phone, and started walking home. That night, in his small bedroom with the door locked, Nicholas plugged the flash drive into his laptop. He watched the footage. Once, twice, a third time, with tears streaming down his face. The truth was right there. His mother protecting her abuser. Deidre Watson, nurse, hero, innocent woman, framed by people who knew exactly what they were doing. "They lied," Nicholas whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking with fury and vindication and grief. "All of them." The screen froze on his mother's face, the moment she pushed the tray away. The moment that saved Megan O'Rourke from injury and condemned Deidre Watson to hell. Nicholas wiped his eyes and opened a new document. Motion to introduce newly discovered evidence. His fingers found the keyboard. If they wanted a war, he'd give them one they'd never forget. If they wanted a war, he'd give them one they'd never forget. 2 days later, Nicholas walked into that war wearing his father's suit. The courtroom was packed. Nicholas had expected the media. His mother's case had made local news, but this was different. Every wooden bench groaned under capacity. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras ready. Spectators craned their necks to watch, some curious, others hungry for spectacle. At the defendant's table, Deidre sat in her orange jumpsuit, Mr. Hollins beside her looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Her eyes found Nicholas in the gallery, and he saw the plea there. "Don't do this. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." But Nicholas was already standing, already moving toward the barrier that separated observers from participants. "Excuse me, young man," the bailiff said, stepping forward. "Spectators remain seated during—" "I'm not a spectator." Nicholas held up the folder containing his motion, filed at 7:04 a.m. that morning. "I'm a familial assistant to the defendant, Deidre Watson. I filed a motion under Ohio Code Section 830.4. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The bailiff looked confused. Mr. Hollins looked horrified. And Deidre closed her eyes like she was watching her son walk into traffic. "All rise!" the bailiff called out, recovering. "The Honorable Judge Shannon Alexander presiding." Shannon swept into the courtroom like a storm system, black robes billowing. She took the bench, her gavel already in hand, her expression carved from ice. "Be seated." She surveyed the packed gallery with visible distaste before her eyes landed on the paperwork before her. "What is this circus?" The clerk spoke up nervously. Your Honor, a motion was filed this morning by Nicholas Watson, son of the defendant, requesting permission to act as familial legal assistant under Ohio Code section. I can read. Shannon's voice could have frozen water. She picked up the motion with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. Her eyes scanned it for exactly 4 seconds before she looked up, directly at Nicholas. Mrs. Watson, Shannon said, not even acknowledging Nicholas existed. Your son has filed a motion to act as familial assistant under Ohio Code A30.4. Ridiculous. Nicholas stood. His legs trembled, but his voice didn't. It's the law, Your Honor. The courtroom went silent. Shannon's eyes narrowed to slits. Sit down, young man. I wasn't speaking to you. With respect, Your Honor, the motion addresses the court. I have the right to— Rights? Shannon's laugh was sharp and bitter. You're a child. This is a criminal trial, not a high school debate competition. She leaned forward. And you read this statute where, exactly? Wikipedia? Nicholas felt 200 pairs of eyes burning into his back, felt his mother's mortification, felt Shannon's contempt designed to humiliate him into silence. He'd prepared for this. Ferretta v. California, 1975, Nicholas said, his voice steady and clear. The Supreme Court held that the Sixth Amendment guarantees a defendant's right to self-representation, and by extension, the right to choose their assistants. In People v. Sharp, the Ohio Supreme Court clarified that family members with demonstrated legal knowledge could petition for participatory roles when appointed counsel fails to meet the standards established in Strickland v. Washington. He paused, meeting Shannon's stare. I didn't read it on Wikipedia, Your Honor. I read it in the Ohio Revised Code. Section 830.4, subsections A through D. The courtroom murmured. A reporter in the back row whispered urgently into her phone. Shannon's face flushed. You've memorized some case names. Congratulations. That doesn't make you a lawyer, boy. No, ma'am, Nicholas said. But it makes me more prepared than the public defender who's spent 15 minutes total on my mother's case. Mr. Hollins sputtered. Your Honor, I object to this characterization. Then tell the court, Nicholas interrupted, turning to face Hollins directly. How many hours have you spent reviewing discovery? How many witnesses have you interviewed? Have you even visited the crime scene? This is absurd. Hollins stood, his face red. Your Honor, I've provided constitutionally adequate— Adequate? Nicholas pulled out a document from his folder. You advised my mother to plead guilty after reviewing her case for 14 minutes and 37 seconds. I timed your visit on the jail's security log. He held up the printout. That's attached as Exhibit C. The whispers grew louder. Shannon's gavel came down like a gunshot. Enough! She glared at Nicholas, then at Hollins, then at the circus her courtroom had become. Mr. Hollins, have you filed any pre-trial motions on behalf of your client? Hollins shifted. Your Honor, the evidence is straightforward. That's a no! Shannon's voice dripped with disgust. Whether it was directed at Hollins or the situation, Nicholas couldn't tell. She was silent for a long moment, her jaw working. Finally, the motion is granted, conditionally. Nicholas's heart leaped. Nicholas Watson may sit at the defense table in an advisory capacity only. He may take notes. He may confer with the defendant during recesses. He will not examine witnesses. He will not make objections unless I specifically allow it. And if he disrupts these proceedings even once, he'll watch the rest of this trial from a holding cell. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor. Sit down. Nicholas moved to the defense table. Deidre reached for his hand under the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. Baby, what are you doing? She whispered. Fighting, Nicholas whispered back. Prosecutor Richard Gaines was smooth, polished. He stood before the jury like a man who'd never lost a case he cared about. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Deidre Watson, a nurse entrusted with patient care, violently assaulted her supervisor after being corrected for negligence. You'll see medical photographs, security footage, witness testimony. This is not complicated. This is assault, plain and simple. He pressed a button. A screen descended. The edited hospital footage played. The version that made Deidre look like an attacker. Then came photographs of Megan O'Rourke's injuries, a bruise on her temple, scraped hands. Nicholas's pulse pounded. These weren't in the discovery documents he'd accessed through Mr. Hollins's file. He stood. Your Honor. Sit down, boy. These files weren't part of the discovery. I've reviewed the complete disclosure packet, and these specific photographs weren't. The gavel slammed. I said, sit down. Nicholas sat, but his pen was already moving, cataloging every discrepancy. Photo Exhibit 7A, not listed in Discovery Index. Security footage timestamp, edited. Starts 00:11:50:03. Original incident began 00 MMPV ani imaven timsubducer ipt opori temperfam. Hospital logs. Prosecutor statement violent assault contradicts medical examiner's report. Minor contusion consistent with fall, not strike. He wrote furiously, his handwriting barely legible, but every contradiction was documented. Every lie was recorded. Gaines presented his case like a symphony, each piece of manufactured evidence building to a crescendo of guilt. And Nicholas wrote it all down. When the judge called for recess, the courtroom erupted into motion. Reporters swarmed. Spectators buzzed. Nicholas helped his mother to her feet as the bailiff approached to escort her back to holding. You're insane, Deidre whispered, but she was smiling through tears. Completely insane. I learned from the best. A reporter intercepted Nicholas at the barrier, a young woman with sharp eyes and a recorder. Nicholas Watson, Tasha Williams, Cleveland Observer. That was incredible. You've got guts, kid. Nicholas looked at her, this stranger who saw a story where he saw his life. No, ma'am, he said quietly. Just the truth. He walked out of the courtroom with his folder clutched to his chest, his father's suit jacket too big on his shoulders, and a flash drive in his pocket that could change everything. Tomorrow, he'd show them exactly what the truth looked like. Tomorrow, he'd show them exactly what the truth looked like. But tonight, he had to find the rest of it. Nicholas's laptop screen cast blue light across his bedroom at 1:23 a.m. His eyes burned. His third cup of coffee sat cold beside scattered printouts and highlighters. But he couldn't stop. Because if Judge Shannon Alexander was willing to humiliate him in open court, there had to be a reason. He'd started with public records, boring, bureaucratic, the kind of documents most people never bothered to read. Campaign finance reports filed with the Ohio Secretary of State, judicial ethics disclosures, tax documents for nonprofit foundations. That's where he found it. Brenner Foundation, Community Development, Grant to Honorable Shannon Alexander Re-Election Campaign, $45,000. Nicholas sat back, his heart pounding. It was filed legally, publicly available, hidden in plain sight among dozens of other donations, buried in a 247-page PDF that nobody expected anyone to actually read. But Nicholas had read every single page. He cross-referenced the dates. The grant was issued 6 weeks before Judge Shannon ruled on a medical malpractice case involving Lakeside Memorial, a case she'd dismissed with prejudice, saving the hospital millions. He dug deeper. Brenner Foundation Board of Directors, Henry Brenner, CEO. The same Henry Brenner whose brother Charles was the patient in his mother's case. The same foundation that owned Lakeside Memorial Hospital. The same money that funded Shannon's campaign. Nicholas grabbed his phone and called the one person still awake at this hour. "It's 1 a.m, Nick," Layla answered groggily. "I need your help, now. Please." 15 minutes later, Layla appeared at his door in sweatpants and her Howard University hoodie, carrying her laptop, and the exasperated expression of a best friend who'd given up on sleep. "This better be good," she muttered, stepping into the small apartment. "It's bigger than good." Nicholas spread the printouts across the kitchen table. "Judge Shannon took money from the same foundation that owns the hospital prosecuting my mom. It's a conflict of interest. She should have recused herself." Layla's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. "Holy shit! I need help organizing this, making it visual, something even a corrupt judge can't ignore." They worked side by side, building a timeline. Layla was a graphic design prodigy. Her college applications showcased infographics that told stories better than most essays. She pulled up design software while Nicholas dictated dates and connections. 2019. Brenner Foundation donates $45,000 to Shannon Alexander's re-election campaign. 2020. Judge Shannon dismisses malpractice case against Lakeside Memorial, saving hospital $3.2 million. 2021. Henry Brenner Foundation CEO appointed to the County Judicial Selection Committee. 2022. Judge Shannon assigned to Deidre Watson case involving Lakeside Memorial and Charles Brenner, Henry's brother. The connections formed a web, money to power to corrupt his mother in a cage. "Nick, if you present this in court," Layla looked at him, her expression both awed and terrified. "They're going to come after you. They're already coming after my mom." Layla saved the file, then saved 3 backup copies. "Then we do this right." Nicholas's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, probably another threat, but something made him answer. "Nicholas?" Daniela's voice was tight with fear. "They're deleting everything." Nicholas went cold. "What?" "I just got called in for emergency server maintenance. They're purging the entire security system. All archived footage, all backup files, everything from the past 6 months. It's happening right now. The footage I copied is all that's left. They're making sure there is no other evidence, no other copies." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I have to go. They're watching. Be careful." The line went dead. Nicholas stared at his phone, then at the flash drive sitting on the table, the only proof his mother was innocent. "We need more copies," Layla said immediately. "Multiple backups, cloud storage, physical drives. If that's the only—" A knock at the door froze them both. 3 sharp raps, official, authoritative. Nicholas approached slowly, checking the peephole. His blood turned to ice. Officer Joanne Travis stood in the hallway, out of uniform, her expression unreadable. "Nick, don't open it," Layla whispered, but Nicholas unlocked the door. If they were coming for him, a deadbolt wouldn't stop them. Travis stood in the doorway, her hands visible and empty. Up close, she looked older than he remembered. Tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight that wasn't yours. "You're poking bears, son," she said quietly. "Walk away." "I can't." Nicholas's voice was steady. "My mom's in a cage because of their lies." Travis glanced past him at Layla, at the scattered evidence covering the table, at the visual timeline glowing on the laptop screen. Something flickered in her expression. Regret, maybe, or recognition. "That footage you have," Travis said. "Where did you get it? Does it matter?" "It matters if you plan to stay alive long enough to use it." Travis leaned against the doorframe. "The Brenners don't play. They've got lawyers who've made bigger problems than you disappear. Witnesses who recant. Evidence that vanishes. You think you're the first person to find proof they don't want found? Then why are you here?" Nicholas challenged. "To scare me, threaten me, arrest me for trespassing at the hospital?" Travis was quiet for a long moment. "I'm here because I turned off my body cam that night. Because someone told me to. Because I didn't ask questions." She met his eyes. "And because your mother deserved better than what she got. From me. From all of us." Nicholas felt Layla move closer behind him, a silent show of solidarity. "If you're asking me to forgive you, I'm not." Travis straightened. "I'm telling you to be smart. Make copies. Hide them. Give them to people you trust. Because if something happens to you, that flash drive becomes evidence of nothing." She turned to leave, then paused. "Your mom talked about you all the time. At the hospital, before, everything. Said you were going to be a lawyer. Change the world." Travis looked back at him. "Don't let them stop you from getting there." Then she was gone, footsteps echoing down the stairwell. Nicholas closed and locked the door, his hands shaking. "Okay," Layla said, her voice high and tight. "Now I'm officially terrified." "Good." Nicholas returned to the table, ejecting the flash drive and pulling up his email. "Fear means we're close to something real." He spent the next hour creating encrypted copies, uploading files to secure cloud storage, burning data to 3 separate drives. Then he drafted an email, carefully worded, accompanied by the visual timeline Layla had created. To email protected, email protected, email protected. Subject: Evidence of judicial corruption in State v. Watson. Attached, you'll find security footage and campaign finance records that prove. His finger hovered over the send button. "Once I send this," Nicholas said, "there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment you stood up in that courtroom," Layla replied. Nicholas clicked send. Then he packaged the physical flash drives into 3 padded envelopes addressed to the same reporters. At 3:47 a.m., he walked 6 blocks to a 24-hour postal facility and mailed them with tracking numbers. Insurance. Because Officer Travis was right about one thing. If something happened to him, the truth needed to survive. Nicholas walked home through empty streets, dawn still hours away, and wondered if his mother would be proud or horrified by what he'd become. Probably both. Tomorrow, he'd walk back into that courtroom with evidence that could free her. Or destroy them all, trying. He got 2 hours of sleep. The courtroom was even more packed on day 2. Word had spread about the teenager challenging a judge. Social media buzzed with hashtags. Local news cameras lined the back wall like soldiers. Nicholas walked through the gallery in his father's suit, carrying his laptop bag and the weight of everything he'd discovered. His mother's eyes found his, still afraid for him, still proud despite herself. Judge Shannon took the bench looking like she hadn't slept either. Her makeup was heavier than yesterday, covering exhaustion or maybe something darker. Guilt, if she was capable of it. The prosecution may present closing arguments, Shannon said, her gavel punctuating each word. Richard Gaines stood, smoothing his expensive tie. He addressed the jury with the easy confidence of a man who'd never lost to people like the Watsons. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. Deidre Watson assaulted her supervisor. You've seen the footage. You've seen the injuries. The defense has offered nothing but a child's theatrics and a mother's denials. He gestured dismissively toward Nicholas. Don't let sympathy cloud your judgment. The facts speak for themselves. He sat down, satisfied, victorious before the verdict even came. Nicholas's hand trembled as he reached for his laptop bag. Your Honor, he said, standing. His voice cut through the courtroom quiet. I request permission to present newly discovered exculpatory evidence. Shannon's eyes narrowed to slits. Denied. Your Honor, the rules of criminal procedure require... I said denied, Mr. Watson. Sit down. The courtroom held its breath. Nicholas didn't sit. Instead, he pulled his laptop from his bag and walked toward the prosecution's media station, the same screen Gaines had used to show the edited footage. Mr. Watson, if you take one more step, Shannon's voice rose. The Sixth Amendment guarantees my mother the right to present a complete defense, Nicholas said, his fingers already connecting the HDMI cable. And the Ohio Rules of Evidence, Section 508, require the court to consider exculpatory evidence even if discovered during trial. Bailiff, remove him! But the screen was already lighting up. The courtroom's attention shifted like a magnetic pull. The unedited security footage filled the display. Timestamp visible, full frame, everything the prosecution had cropped out. Gasps rippled through the gallery. On screen, Megan O'Rourke shoved Deidre first. Then they stumble. Then, clear as day, Deidre lunges forward, not to attack, but to push the medication tray away from Megan's falling body, protecting her abuser from injury. The hospital's footage was cropped, Nicholas narrated, his voice steady despite his pounding heart. They submitted 90 seconds starting at timestamp 11:50:03. But the incident began at 11:47:15. This is the full frame, the complete truth. The jury leaned forward, transfixed. Several members' expressions shifted from certainty to doubt to horror. Your Honor, I object. Gaines shot to his feet, his composure cracking. This is a violation of procedure. This is a violation of justice, Nicholas shot back. He clicked to the next slide. Campaign finance records filled the screen. And speaking of violations, the document showed it all. Donor names, amounts, dates. The Brenner Foundation's was 45's contribution to Shannon Alexander's re-election campaign, highlighted in yellow. The same hospital prosecuting my mother funded this judge's campaign, Nicholas said, his voice rising. The Brenner Foundation, owned by the family of the patient in this case, donated $45,000 to Judge Shannon Alexander. The courtroom erupted. Reporters frantically typed on phones. Spectators shouted questions. The jury looked from the screen to the judge in shock. Shannon's face drained of color. This is contempt! Bailiff! Under Canon 3 of the Ohio Judicial Code of Conduct, Nicholas said, turning to face her directly, his voice cutting through the chaos. A judge must recuse herself from any case where her impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Financial relationships with parties to a case create mandatory recusal requirements. He pulled out a printed copy of the Judicial Ethics Code, holding it up like evidence. You were required to disclose this conflict of interest, Your Honor. You were required to step down. Instead, you accepted a case involving the same foundation that financed your campaign, ruled against my mother at every turn, and allowed tampered evidence while excluding the truth. Shannon gripped her gavel, her hand trembling. "How dare you? How dare you?" Nicholas countered, and the courtroom went silent. "My mother is a nurse who saved a patient's life and protected her abuser from injury. She's sitting in that chair because the system you're supposed to uphold decided her freedom was worth less than a campaign donation." Reporters were already moving, phones pressed to ears, rushing toward exits to broadcast the scandal. Camera operators repositioned for better angles. The bailiff looked uncertainly between Nicholas and Shannon, unsure which authority to follow. Gaines was shouting objections that nobody heard. Mr. Hollins sat frozen, stunned into uselessness. Deidre had her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. And Judge Shannon Alexander, corrupt, compromised, caught, sat trembling on her bench as her courtroom dissolved into chaos around her. "This court!" Shannon's voice shook. She tried again, louder. "This court will recess!" The gavel slammed down, but it sounded hollow. Defeated. "All parties will return tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say the words that would save face. "Bailiff, clear my courtroom, now!" Security moved in, ushering people toward the exits. The gallery erupted in questions and exclamations. Reporters surrounded Nicholas, shouting for comments. "Mr. Watson, did you know about the donations before today? Nicholas, how did you obtain the unedited footage? Is your mother going to sue for wrongful prosecution?" Nicholas ignored them all. His eyes were locked on his mother as the bailiff prepared to escort her back to holding. Deidre was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. But she was smiling too, a broken, hopeful, terrified smile. She mouthed two words across the chaos. "Thank you." Nicholas nodded once. Then the crowd swallowed him, and he let himself be pulled toward the exit, toward the cameras, toward a world that was about to learn what happened when you underestimated a 16-year-old boy with nothing left to lose. Outside the courthouse, the steps were packed with media, microphones thrust toward Nicholas's face like weapons. Questions came from every direction, overlapping into noise. "Nicholas! Nicholas Watson!" Tasha Williams from the Cleveland Observer pushed to the front, her recorder extended. "Nicholas, what happens next?" Nicholas looked into the cameras, into the faces of strangers who'd watched his mother be destroyed and done nothing. He straightened his father's tie and spoke directly to the lens. "What happens next is justice," he said. "Real justice, not the kind you can buy with campaign donations." Behind him, the courthouse doors slammed shut. Inside, Judge Shannon Alexander sat alone in her chambers, staring at her gavel and the career that was crumbling around it. And somewhere in a holding cell, Deidre Watson allowed herself to hope for the first time in 3 months. Tomorrow would bring a new judge. Tomorrow would bring the truth that no amount of money could bury. Tomorrow, everything will change. And it did. Judge Harriet Cole was everything Shannon Alexander wasn't. She arrived at Ishulter 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, carrying a briefcase that showed years of use and a reputation that needed no introduction. 62 years old, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and reading glasses perched on her nose, Judge Cole had spent 30 years on the bench with a record so clean it gleamed. The courtroom was quieter today. The spectacle seekers had been replaced by people who actually cared about the outcome. Deidre sat at the defense table, her hands folded, her eyes red from sleepless hope. Nicholas sat beside her, his father's suit pressed, his evidence organized in manila folders that had become his armor. Judge Cole settled onto the bench, opened the case file, and didn't speak for a full 3 minutes. She read, really read, every page, every exhibit, every motion Nicholas had filed in his desperate, brilliant crusade. The courtroom waited. Finally, Judge Cole removed her glasses and looked directly at Deidre. "Mrs. Watson, I've spent the past 18 hours reviewing your case, the evidence submitted by your son, the recordings, the campaign finance records, the timeline of judicial misconduct." She paused. "I've also reviewed the original footage submitted by the prosecution and compared it to the unedited security recordings." Deidre's breathing quickened. Nicholas reached for her hand under the table. "The discrepancies are not merely significant. They constitute evidence tampering and prosecutorial misconduct of the highest order." Judge Cole's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "The footage was deliberately edited to misrepresent your actions. The medical documentation was selectively presented to obscure the truth. And this entire prosecution was pursued under the oversight of a judge with undisclosed financial conflicts of interest." Richard Gaines sat rigid at the prosecutor's table, his jaw clenched. Judge Cole looked at him with something between pity and disgust. "Mr. Gaines, did you personally review the complete security footage before filing charges?" "Your Honor, I relied on the evidence provided by—" "That's a no!" Judge Cole's interruption was surgical. "You relied on what the hospital's lawyers fed you, didn't ask questions, and pursued a case against an innocent woman because it was easier than seeking the truth." She turned back to Deidre, and her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Watson, what was done to you is an affront to everything this courtroom is supposed to represent. On behalf of a system that failed you catastrophically, I apologize." Deidre's composure shattered. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Judge Cole raised her gavel. "The evidence is clear and incontrovertible. The charges against Deidre Watson are dismissed with prejudice. Mrs. Watson, you are free to go." The gavel fell. For a moment, nobody moved. The words hung in the air like something too fragile to believe. Then, Deidre collapsed. Nicholas caught her, his arms wrapping around his mother as 3 months of terror and hope and survival poured out in great wrenching sobs. She clutched him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to destroy her. "We did it," Nicholas whispered into her hair. "Mom, we did it. You did it, baby. You did it." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. The gallery erupted in applause. Real applause, not the polite golf clap of procedure, but the thunderous recognition of justice, finally, impossibly served. Officer Joanne Travis approached slowly, her face carefully neutral. In her hands, she carried the key to Deidre's handcuffs, those metal bracelets that had marked her as a criminal for 93 days. "Mrs. Watson," Travis said quietly. Deidre looked up, her eyes still streaming, her body still shaking. Travis unlocked the cuffs with steady hands. They fell away with a soft click that sounded like freedom. "I'm sorry," Travis said, so quietly that only Deidre and Nicholas could hear. "For all of it. For not asking questions. For turning off my camera. For being part of what they did to you." She looked at Nicholas, and something like awe flickered in her expression. "Your son's the bravest person I've ever seen." Then she stepped back, fading into the background of a story that was no longer hers. Nicholas helped his mother stand. Her wrists were bare. Her orange jumpsuit would be exchanged for her own clothes within the hour. The cage had opened. Deidre cupped Nicholas's face in her hands, hands that had healed patients, raised a son, and survived hell. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "He'd be proud of you," Nicholas replied. "You taught me to fight." They walked out of that courtroom together. The courthouse steps were a carnival of media and jubilation. Reporters swarmed like locusts, microphones extended, cameras rolling, questions flying from every direction. "Nicholas, how did you do it?" "Mrs. Watson, will you sue the hospital?" "Nicholas, what's next for you?" Nicholas stood at the top of the steps, his mother beside him, and looked straight into the cameras, into the lens that would carry his words across the city, across the state, maybe further. "How did I do it?" he repeated. His voice was calm, clear, unshakable. "They told me to sit down. I stood up. For justice." The crowd erupted. Questions multiplied. But Nicholas had said what he needed to say. He guided his mother down the steps, through the crush of bodies toward Layla, who waited with her car and the biggest smile Nicholas had ever seen. Behind them, the courthouse, that monument to broken promises and bought verdicts, stood silent. But inside, things were moving. 3 weeks later, Judge Shannon Alexander faced a formal investigation by the Ohio Judicial Conduct Board. Her campaign finances were audited. Her case history was reviewed. By week's end, she'd resigned rather than face public hearings that would expose the full extent of her corruption. The Brenner Foundation's ties to judicial campaigns became a statewide scandal. Henry Brenner stepped down as CEO. Lakeside Memorial Hospital faced federal investigation for evidence tampering. Megan O'Rourke was terminated and faced potential criminal charges for filing false reports. Richard Gaines quietly transferred to a different department, his conviction record forever tainted by the case he'd pursued without seeking truth. And Deidre Watson returned to nursing. Not at Lakeside. She'd never set foot in that building again, but at Cleveland Metro General, where she was hired as a patient advocate. Her job was to ensure no patient was neglected, no concern ignored, no voice silenced. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Nicholas received a full scholarship to Ohio State's Youth Law Academy, a prestigious pre-law program for exceptional high school students. The acceptance letter arrived with a handwritten note from the dean. "We need more lawyers like you will become." 6 weeks later, the television studio was smaller than Nicholas expected. Bright lights, cameras on rolling stands. Tasha Williams from the Cleveland Observer sat across from him, professional and warm. "We're here with Nicholas Watson," she said to the camera. "The 16-year-old who took on a corrupt judge and won. Nicholas, you've become something of a hero to people who feel powerless in the justice system. What do you want them to know?" Nicholas thought about his answer, about his mother in the gallery, wearing her own clothes, her nurse's badge from Cleveland Metro visible on her purse, about his father's suit, now tailored to actually fit him, about late nights in libraries and courtrooms designed to crush people like him. "Justice isn't about age or power," he said finally, looking directly into the camera. "It's about courage to speak when others stay silent. It's about standing up even when the whole room tells you to sit down. It's about believing that truth matters more than money, or influence, or fear." He paused, glancing toward his mother in the studio audience. She was crying again, but this time they were tears of pride. She nodded at him, encouraging him to continue. "My mom taught me that doing the right matters, even when no one's watching," Nicholas said. "But I learned something else. Doing right matters, especially when everyone's watching and trying to stop you." Tasha smiled. "What's next for Nicholas Watson?" "Law school, eventually. But first I finished high school. Take my mom to dinner. Be a regular kid for a while." He grinned. "Maybe even go to prom." The interview ended with applause from the studio audience. Deidre met Nicholas as he stepped off the set, pulling him into a hug that felt like home. "You ready to be a regular kid?" she asked, laughing through happy tears. "Maybe," Nicholas said, "but if the system tries to crush someone else who can't fight back, you'll be there," Deidre finished. "Because that's who you are." They walked out of the studio together, into Cleveland sunshine, into a future that was finally, impossibly theirs. Behind them, the cameras kept rolling. Because some stories deserve to be told. Some voices deserve to be heard. And some 16-year-old boys, in suits too big for their shoulders and courage too big for courtrooms, deserve to change the world.